Don't forget, everyone, the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival is now open to accept all entries. We will accept entries until December 1st of 2020. But remember, these are supposed to be universal premieres, so it should be the first time these movies are ever seen. Please, please, I implore everyone, read the rules very carefully on the Burnettwork.net website. This public service announcement has been brought to you by, well, me. Like, who else would bring it to you? I don't know. It's me. It's always me. That's how it works. I mean, I don't know what to say. Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, and, of course, your pharaoh of physical media. And lest we forget, I always have to go back to this picture at least. Your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here with another scintillating episode of Robservations. This is Robservations episode number 539. My God, I've come a long way since I was at Greg Smith's house shooting him and his 1-to-1 scale land speeder. I'm soon to have a 6th scale land speeder. I don't think it's going to be as good as Greg's, but I'll have it. 539 episodes, everyone, and this has been a journey that I've been on with you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Yes, as I mentioned, I just want to point out to everyone who's been sending me films, I appreciate it. But as was pointed out to me earlier this week, I did get a really good film I was very excited about. It turns out it was in another festival 3 years ago. So I would implore everyone, please read the rules. This is supposed to be a Universal Film Festival and Universal premieres. I'd love to include everyone's films, but if they've already been shown before, I have to say, it sort of defeats the purpose of what the festival is about. It also isn't fair to the entrants who have made their films within the boundaries of the rules that I set. Look, I would love to let everybody's movies in, but I did set these rules up. I know rules are made to be broken, but I got to get through at least the first film festival and adhere to the rules. So I just want everybody to check before they make submissions, and I love getting submissions. Please, 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 please check the rules, because if your film has already been playing at other film festivals, or if it's been around, say, on the internet for, 8 years, this is not the place to put your material. Although I've really liked everybody's material. I want to thank people for sending it in. So some of the premieres I was going to have this week I've had to pull, unfortunately. And I don't like that. I don't like when I have to do things that I don't like to do. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, you are certainly welcome here. Welcome home. Today's chat, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my heroes. Yes, that's right. One of my heroes, as you all know. I could wax rhapsodic about him all day, every day, but I will spare you. You already know him. You love him. That's right. William Shatner. James Tiberius Kirk himself. I love William Shatner, or as he likes me to call him, Bill, whenever I see him. I learned that over 20 years ago, when we made Free Enterprise together. Now, Bill Shatner's having a big day today. Today is Tuesday, and a very significant release is coming out from Shout Factory. Shout Factory might be familiar to some of you because they released my film, The Hills Run Red, and Dave Parker's film, on June 16th of this year. But today, what Bill Shatner is releasing is a deluxe edition. By the way, you get an extra disc, a 5th disc, if you buy it off of the Scream Factory website. This is what Bill has wrought. This is the Captain's Collection Special Edition. It comes out today. That's right, today, October 20th. And if you buy it from the Shout Factory website, you do get a an extra disc. This exclusive special edition contains a fifth Blu-ray disc, only available on shoutfactory.com, which contains additional material and is limited to 2,000 units. See below for complete details. Well, we're going to look at the complete details. This is also available as a bundle with William Shatner's Has Been on vinyl. You can get a special edition where it comes with Ben Folds, a collaboration he did with Ben Folds, Has Been on vinyl, which if you don't have the Has Been album, why don't you? It's terrific. This is interesting. So it's a collection of documentaries Shatner has made regarding Star Trek over the years. Boldly telling what no one has told before, William Shatner's incredible in-depth look at the creation, evolution, legacy of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek comes to life for the very first time on Blu-ray in this collection of 4 documentaries. The Captains. Shatner sits down for 5 insightful interviews with the franchise captains, Sir Patrick Stewart, Avery Brooks, Kate Mulgrew, Scott Bakula, and his own Kirk counterpart, Chris Pine. The Captains Close Up. The interviews continue with this docuseries formed from additional interview footage unable to be included in the original The Captains film. The third documentary is Chaos on the Bridge, the delightful and surprising story of bringing Star Trek The Next Generation to the screen, which is a similar story that we told for CBS on the Blu-rays of The Next Generation. And Get a Life, Shatner's own unforgettable love letter to the fans of Star Trek. Those are all documentaries he's made, collected here for the first time. This special edition includes a 5th bonus disc exclusive to shoutfactory.com featuring 1.5 hours of never-before-seen interviews and an additional feature-length documentary. And then it goes through, look at all these special features. There's a lot of them. So it's good stuff. This was released today. So you can get it at shoutfactory.com. You can get it at Amazon. Wherever you want to get it, you can. Now, great, right? Sounds pretty cool. Why not? This is pretty exciting. William Shatner tweeted out this today. So my new Blu-ray Star Trek box set, documentary box set, is out today. My producer asked if StarTrek.com, if they could help us get the word out. They replied they won't support it because it's not CBS-owned content. Huh? I licensed clips from them. I guess I'm not woke enough. So my man Bill said these things today, and there's a lot to unpack with what he was saying here. And it tied into a few other things that I really wanted to touch on. And I just realized I accidentally erased something that I was going to share with you that I'm going to find. But so Shatner is making this interesting tweet here. And there's a lot here about this that I have a lot to say. And it goes back to something that I've been talking about for a long time in terms of, well, IP and franchises and all of these things. First of all, StarTrek.com is basically a Star Trek news website. And it's also owned by Paramount and CBS. So it's the official Star Trek website. Lately, it's been publishing some what I would say are, I don't want to call them garbage articles, but I think a lot of inappropriate articles that are full of weird identity politics and all of that. Not that that's wrong, but it seems like it doesn't necessarily belong on the official Star Trek website. It's odd. I've reported on a few of these stories in the past. But here's the thing. My entire life, I have been a person who has acquired, let's call them fan-produced material. I don't know if there was any media phenomenon, the way Star Trek became a media phenomenon, that inspired the kind of creativity amongst its fan base that Star Trek did. And if you know what a fanzine is, it's like a magazine but created by fans, fanzines. Larry Nemechek was talking to me about what he told it, I'd never heard this term until he told me, backgrounders, people like Jeffrey Mandel or Doug Drexler or even Larry that were writing backstory to the Star Trek universe back in the late 70s. Because there wasn't any, how do you fill in backstories? It wasn't being filled in. There was the original 79 episodes of Star Trek, and that was it. There was the official licensed novels, but were those canonical? No. So there were people that were trying to make sense of the Star Trek universe because the Star Trek universe is such a compelling place. And if you become a fan of it, you contribute to your own self. I mean, what's really interesting, like when the Franz Joseph Technical Manual came out in 1975, it gave names to the 12 Constitution class ships, just like the Enterprise. The Constitution class is the Enterprise. That the Enterprise is part of the Constitution class. We saw other, because of the way production works, it was just cheaper to utilize the Enterprise model that they have, or they would even go buy off-the-shelf AMT Enterprise model kits, such as famously used in the Doomsday Machine. So because of the production limitations of Star Trek, reusing the model of the Enterprise or then going and buying off-the-shelf models of the Enterprise made their way into the actual production of the series. Now, what that did was, once you have more than one hero Constitution-class ship, whether they find the Constellation in the Doomsday Machine, or they find the Defiant and the Tholian Web, or the heavy cruisers that were part of the M5 war games and the Ultimate Computer, like the Lexington, or the ships that we heard mentioned but we never saw, like the Intrepid, commanded by Vulcans. The genius of all of this was to expand Star Trek lore, and I don't even think they realized at the time that they were doing it how that would affect the audience. Because when you're watching Star Trek, you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, you mean there's other ships just like the Enterprise that are going on adventures just like the Enterprise throughout the galaxy with different crews and people we've never met or never heard of unless we run across them in an episode? I mean, I don't think it's truly understood that what that does to a fan base that loves your show. Because what you are doing is you are inadvertently creating a much bigger tapestry than what's happening on screen. Suddenly, you're thinking to yourselves like, wow, so there's a whole heavy cruiser only manned by Vulcans. Still a Starfleet vessel, but there's only Vulcans on board. What was that like? So suddenly the mind races. Who is the captain of such a ship? If they're all Vulcans, what's a Vulcan captain like? What's a Vulcan doctor like, or a Vulcan first officer, or a Vulcan yeoman? When you watch these things and they drop these nuggets, what happens is your viewership picks up on this. And if you have the kind of, inherently creative viewership that Star Trek fans are, then you have somebody who decides, I'm going to go write a story about an all-Vulcan starship. And then there are questions. Once you start making those leaps, then half of fandom's like, what happens when everyone's suffering from Pon farr on the ship? What do? Do they have to return to Vulcan? With a whole crew of Vulcans, they have to go back, 400 times in a 365-day year? I mean, it's the mind boggles. But the point is, I'm being facetious, but the point is, when you have these things, this is what happens in fan communities. When you have these worlds where there's all kinds of other stuff happening in the universe or the world that we don't see, it just fuels the imagination. And people write stories, and they write folk songs, or they build model kits, and suddenly your imagination is not limited by the IP of the studio. So, for instance, like if you were to try and go get a license to, say, make another starship that wasn't the Enterprise, well, that starship isn't copywritten. It's not trademarked or anything like that. So the studio would have the owners of the IP, the owners of the Star Trek IP, now it's, studio, it's CBS owns that IP. Well, if you went to them and said, I'd really like to make a licensed model kit of this, they would be like, why? They don't know. At the corporate level, they don't know. Now, fortunately, for CBS, there was a guy, he's been promoted, named John Van Citters, and his I wouldn't say Girl Friday, but his coworker, Marion Cordry, and they ran CBS licensing, and they're great. And I don't know if Marion's still there, but I'm sure, John Van Citters is now in charge of the whole Star Trek brand, but there was a love and a knowledge of Star Trek there that was very deep, and they really cared. Like John Van Citters made sure the Star Trek publishing division was as great as it was. But the thing is, even they know. If you went to John Van Citters and said, I want to make whatever product, this thing, he would decide whether or not that product was worth making. But when you're talking about in-universe stuff, not like Star Trek golf clubs or bed sheets or something like that, if somebody wanted to make, I don't know, the model of the Ion starship from the episode Spock's Brain. Well, at the time, I think Eagle Moss actually made one, but Eagle Moss did a version of it that was from the remastered Star Trek. But the question that John Van Citters would have probably asked you was, well, why? Why do you want to make a model of the Ion spaceship from Spock's Brain? And the answer would be like, well, because that would be cool. And that's what it really comes down to is that would be cool. It would be cool. But the thing about that is while it might have appeared in the episode, CBS has no reason to manufacture. And first of all, how many people are actually going to buy a model kit or a replica of the Ion spaceship from Spock's Brain? I'll raise my hand. Some of you are raising your hands, I know. But that's what Eagle Moss is for, and Eagle Moss has a license. That means they go to CBS and they get a license to make Star Trek product, which means they have to pay a licensing fee, probably a pretty substantial licensing fee, to Paramount, and they're manufacturing collectibles and, my favorite, their Starship miniatures from all the different Star Trek shows. So they're making money. CBS is making money that way. And on the flip side, Eagle Moss wants to make sure that their license is protected. So they're hoping that, or they just assume that CBS will not sell the license to make starships to another company. Because that would be, you're competing, and you don't want to do that. You want to have the exclusive license to make Starship miniatures the way Eagle Moss did. Now, you could have other companies, like gaming companies, that make gaming miniatures, and that wouldn't be the same thing as nice desktop collectibles. But that's why the studio has to protect their licensed product. Now, in the case of what William Shatner has done, William Shatner has created this documentary programming where he interviews all the actors who have played captains up to this point. Obviously, it's pre-Discovery. Interviews them, talks to people who've appeared on Star Trek. So what he's making are documentaries about Star Trek and about the people on Star Trek. Well, CBS doesn't own those things. They don't own those things. They have no stake in them. So officially, when William Shatner says, I'm putting out this amazing box set of hours and hours and hours of interviews, this is very relevant to anybody who's a Star Trek fan. Who wouldn't want to have his documentaries? Chaos on the Bridge is very interesting. The whole, the cluster F that was the beginnings of Next Generation. Very interesting stuff. And Shatner being he is pretty much the dude of all Star Trek. And by the way, he's going to be 90 years old, 90 on March 22nd, 2021. So Shatner's putting this out, and in his mind, he's created a great documentary set. This is it is a really great set. It's worth buying. I wholeheartedly suggest you buy it. But because it has no connection to CBS, officially, they won't promote it. Apparently, promoting this because it's not official CBS product, it somehow does something. I don't know. It's somehow, well, if CBS doesn't make money off it, we're not going to promote it. And I totally understand that position. But as the world becomes more corporatized on our way to becoming rollerball, where we're going to have the corporate wars, in the not-too-distant future, wars will no longer exist, but there will be rollerball or maybe the Hunger Games or something else. As the world becomes more corporate and our corporate overlords have to exert control over these things more and more and more, the question that I find myself asking, and I've asked before on this show, is, do the owners of the IP owe the people that love their IP, owe them anything? So, for instance, like myself, I've been a Star Trek fan since I was 5 years old. I've bought, I can't begin to tell you, thousands of comics, books, model kits, action figures. I mean, you name it. I have spent so much of my waking hours, more than you could possibly imagine. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I imagined living naked on a starship with a girl named Laura Hofferman when I was in the 8th grade. I mean, these are ongoing fantasies that I had for a long time. And the naked part was good, right? But so your mind, as I've put it, your mind was either colonized or invaded, depending on how you want to think about it, by your favorite IP. Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. I mean, you name it. Fandom is all too, now the MCU, fandom is all too aware of these things. And when this has happened, your imagination has now been taken over by a corporate entity. I mean, if you want to look at it in a certain way. Now, what happens then is that your creativity, or what you want to do, because you love this thing so much, you now have limited your own creativity in regards to how much you love a IP, because you can't necessarily do something with it. You can't, like, if you want to share your creativity and, I don't know, crochet dolls or make maps of the Star Trek universe, or whatever the hell you want to do, and you want to share them with other fans, if you were to sell them, and I mean, if you spend 1,000 hours creating a Star Trek star chart of something, and hey, look, Larry Nemeczek has made multiple Star Trek star chart books, but if you've done that, and your time and effort, and you've painted these beautiful images, if you were to sell those to your fellow fans, and by the way, we're talking, how many people are going to buy them? 100? So you're selling them to your fellow fans. You're sharing your love of a certain IP with other people. That is a violation of, you're overstepping your bounds, which I totally get. I'm 100% in agreement with, once you overstep those bounds, you have committed something that you've committed an act. You're basically stealing, in a way, stealing IP. But now here's the question that I have. You know, you probably didn't make those Star Trek star chart maps to really make any money. You did it because you loved the brand, you loved the IP, you loved Star Trek, because maybe 35 years ago, the Star Trek IP colonized your imagination, invaded your imagination. It's been with you since then. Same with Star Wars, same with anything. Your favorite sports team, whatever it is that infected you, whatever reason that happened, it happened. And it's very real to you. And my question is, the corporation that now owns these IPs, they want your money. They want your continued respect and adulation of their franchise. But what do they owe you? Do they owe you anything? Now, this is a very weird, sort of an esoteric topic, because the easy answer would be to say, no, they don't owe you anything. But I think that people do. I think that in a certain way, shape, or form, that the corporations that are the custodians of these franchises, that are the owners, let's face it, they're not custodians, they're owners, they own it. that they, in turn, have some kind of a responsibility, because the people that run these corporations, they weren't there 10 years, they weren't there 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even 50 years ago. Star Trek debuted 54 years ago on September 8th, 1966 in the United States. So it's been around for over 50 years, half a century. And it's been inspiring all kinds of new generations of people. And the question is, does the corporation that owns Star Trek, do they owe their audience members anything? And the idea, obviously, the easy answer is to say no, they don't. But as a lifelong fan myself, I know that that's not necessarily the case. They're happy to take your money, but when you feel that franchise is somehow being abused by its very owners, they're like, who cares? Fuck off. It's ours. We can do whatever we want. Well, but it was mine a lot longer than it was before CBS owned it. I mean, I've been a Star Trek fan since you took over later. So in a way, on one hand, it's an easy answer. Yes, they own it. You can't do anything with it. But on the other hand, they've expected multiple generations of people to grow up and love their franchise. Having new people, like right now, they launched a streaming service to profiteer off that franchise. So anyway, how does this all reflect back to? I'm just musing about something I've always thought was interesting about IP. Well, now as IP now becomes, before it was controlled not necessarily so corporately. Everything is becoming much more corporate. The very IP itself, the way it's, if there's more of it to be made, the way it's being made and conceived of is from a corporate point of view. And maybe it always was, but knowing the creators of specifically the Star Trek franchise, look, everyone wants to make money. But that's not their primary motivation. Now it is. Now it's just to make money. And they want it to be good, sure, but in the corporation's mind, they're like, well, it's never not going to be good. It's just our IP, and it's made money for us for 54 years, and we're going to continue to do so. So let's make money on it. But the whole point is that the only reason that it's endured for 54 years is there was something in it that transcended simple money. It wasn't just some kind of entertainment you mindlessly followed and turned off. I did not watch every episode of Star Trek 100,000 times when I was a kid because it was just, I was passing my hour of time away. No, there was something deep, deep, deep in Star Trek that permeated to the very bottom levels of my soul and took over my mind and my mind, body, spirit in a certain way. And my mind and body and spirit and devotion are valuable. And when you have millions of people who have been colonized or invaded in the same way and occupied, well, those millions of people are certainly valuable to your corporation because you make lots of money. Well, now here's the thing. Fans aren't the only people. The world at large is aware of these IPs. And lots of people talk. I mean, Star Trek has become a mainstay. When you say, beam me up, there's no intelligent life down here. Everyone knows what you mean. Star Trek has become a ubiquitous part of pop culture, the pop culture landscape. If you say Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk, everybody knows who you're talking about. Jean-Luc Picard, Data, everybody knows who those characters are. So, does the corporation owe anything to the rest of the world? Again, probably a question that's easy to say no to. But then again, you know what? Can I think about Star Trek? Can I talk to my friends? If I sit down and have a 5-hour conversation about different starship classes, if I'm at Lola's on a Sunday night, that 5-hour conversation, is that something that CBS should be able to market or be able to license? Like, what happens when our technology is such that if somebody's talking about Star Trek, it gets monetized? Like, it's like, okay, you get billed. You had a 5-hour conversation about Star Trek. That 5 hours was based on our IP, so we were monetizing it because you're thinking about our IP. Now, that might seem like a crazy idea now, but just you wait. Just you wait. It's just not monetized now because it's too hard to do. Now, the question that I have is that William Shatner is, whether he wants to admit it or not, the Don of the Star Trek universe. He's the Don Corleone of the Star Trek universe. He is the king. He was the first captain. He was the best captain, and he's still alive, and he's out there putting these documentaries together. So the thing is, how can you, at StarTrek.com, how can you say that anything William Shatner does that's Star Trek related should not be covered? Simply because there's no money involved for you? Well, no, but it does promote your entire brand. You know, you can say that there's no monetary compensation. Like, yes, there is no, you know what, if we're supporting Shatner didn't make these documentaries for us, well, you know, CBS, you could have bought them. Shout Factory is releasing them in a big set. Why didn't you release them? Anyway, regardless, be that as it may, you don't think that William Shatner selling his documentaries in a big box set, The Captains, benefits you? I mean, why? Of course it does. It's somebody talking about your IP, and you could say that, well, we didn't. You could have done this. You could have made it yourself, but you didn't. And so often, the reason that fans are compelled to make things is because, one, people that are fans of science fiction, excuse me, imagination connoisseurs are a creative bunch of folks. And it's part of it's in our DNA to want to create things, make things, have things from our favorite, like, you know, Elizabeth is fond of calling this a sex toy. And indeed, you could make the argument that it probably is. But you know what this is? This is V'ger. This is the Eagle Moss model of V'ger that comes to Earth from Star Trek the Motion Picture. I love this. I've wanted a model of V'ger my whole life, and I could never get one. There was never a licensed V'ger model. Like, admittedly, I would want this to be even bigger than it is. But I love this, and this is a licensed, I mean, Eagle Moss did license this, and they put this out as one of their special editions. And I love their Eagle Moss special edition, so, you know, I bought it, jokes aside. But I wanted one for a long time. And now I don't know, the people, when I was growing up, there were so many things I bought, resin model kits of like the Excelsior, things that were like this big. I didn't do a very good job on mine, but they weren't available commercially. So people made them. Fans made models, fans made patches and models. And now theoretically, that's not necessarily a good thing to do because you are using someone else's IP. But at the time, you know, 35 years ago, nobody was, or 30 years ago, no, it'd be 36 years ago, when the Excelsior was introduced, there wasn't a model kit of it. Nobody made one. I wanted one, even though that ship was the Pregnant Peanut. It looked like a space guppy. But I still wanted to get a model of it because it was a new Starfleet ship. And I waited, and nobody made a model of one. There was not a model of the Reliant available when Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan came out. But, I mean, you have an Enterprise model, you want a Reliant model. They didn't make one for a long time, so you had to buy bootleg kits, or people made garage kits where you literally have people making model kits for you in their garages because they love it. And that's problematic in that you can't get that stuff. So it's a push-pull. So when William Shatner's like can't get coverage on StarTrek.com, that isn't even that is, to me, one, it's incredibly short-sighted, first of all. Because anything that William Shatner does that's at all Star Trek related benefits your brand. If you choose not to release his documentaries, I'm sure that they went to you. When you choose not to release his documentaries, that doesn't mean his documentaries and the existence of those documentaries doesn't bolster your brand. And I think there's no clear line of demarcation for that. I mean, there is, but if you turn around and go, well, Bill Shatner's his documentaries are not they're not owned, they're not official CBS documentaries, so, and I understand, like Chaos on the Bridge, maybe there's things that you don't want to know that are damaging to your IP, or so you see them as that. They also happened. They're part of the real public record. So the craziness, the turnover on the writing staff. I mean, I myself have done interviews all about it. It occurred. It's not like it didn't happen. So when you're talking about chaos on the bridge, and maybe there's a little bit of a takedown of Gene Roddenberry, making him look a bit more human than he usually does, well, that was because Shatner did the research and talked to the people that were there and all of that. But I can understand that CBS doesn't want to do anything to damage their IP, nor does Disney with Star Wars or Warner Brothers with Harry Potter. You know, you don't want to do that, and I get that. But what obligation do you have to the people at large? Like, William Shatner's life was forever and ever will be shaped by Star Trek. I'm sure there have been times when he wouldn't have wanted it to be. But so when he wonders why StarTrek.com won't even interview him for the set. I mean, it's not called CBS Home Entertainment. It's StarTrek.com. And Star Trek, by its very nature, presupposes that there is a universe. Star Trek is about the universe. And you're not going to cover the universe of Star Trek? You're only going to cover Discovery and Lower Decks and then have people write identity politics articles that are so off base. I wonder how they wind up on StarTrek.com. Next time you publish an article, I don't know, written by some 25-year-old about some social justice thing, ask yourself, why are you publishing that article, but you're not interviewing William Shatner for his significant release, The Captains, that's being put out by Shout Factory? You would interview him if you had an environmental cause. The only reason you're not is because he's selling a product that isn't your product, that is referencing your product. I mean, maybe you thought you couldn't release those things in the first place because they were warts and all. I understand that, but it doesn't matter. It's still going out into the world. It's still there. So why not to do your part? And I understand it's money, 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 money. And the thing is, does CBS.com or StarTrek.com, I've read other things on that website that don't necessarily have to do directly with Star Trek. So is it just because you're not selling Shatner's documentaries? Well, that doesn't seem really that maybe you didn't want to. Maybe you didn't think the numbers were good enough. There's a reason why you probably didn't want to sell Shatner's documentaries, but that doesn't mean you don't want to report on him. And maybe they've allowed him to do that interview now. The cooler heads prevail. Shatner has a big social media presence, so maybe something good happened. But I see that there's nothing wrong. These discs celebrate your IP. Now, as far as IP law is concerned, my take is a kumbaya, pie in the sky. Oh, this is the lovely world that we all want to live on. But the world isn't that way. I get it. The universe is indifferent to my suffering. That's what I always say. But the fact is, what's ironic is the more corporate control is exerted over these franchises, well, then the less they are the very franchises the corporations bought to make sure were there in the first place, because the creators knew what they were doing. So it's a very interesting situation to be in. It really is. Now I'm going to see if I can find the letter the article. I'm looking for the article that I lost. And I don't know where it is. I'm going to see if I can find it, because it was really interesting. And it ties into this whole idea about how our brains are colonized. Like, this is my own thing. How our brains are colonized, they're occupied by the IPs that we love. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it again, because I really wanted to read this because it was really interesting. I found it. That was not hard. I love how the internet works this way. Let me see if I can add to this. And dun-dun-dun. Let me hang on. Let me add the screenshot. Live on camera. Nope. Go to screen capture. Hang on. And let's do that. Yes, please. Just bear with me for a moment while I figure this out. It shouldn't take me that long. See, normally I would have a producer doing these things. Like Joe Rogan always can shout at somebody and go, "Hey man, can you take care and find this thing and put it up?" But I can't do that. I've got to do it myself. Damn it. Okay, and I found it. I have found it. Let me make it smaller. And put it into the... Well, you know what? I'll just make it big. That's what I'll do. I'll just leave it like that. How about that? I'll just make it big, and you can look at it. So there we go. When Fandom Clashes with IP Law by Madhavi Sundar on July 23rd, 2019. I thought this was interesting. I wanted to share this article with you. Within just a few days of Netflix releasing Season 3 of Stranger Things, nearly half the show's 40 million viewers had watched all 8 episodes. Fortunately for them, there are other ways to inhabit the town of Hawkins, Indiana, circa 1985. In Los Angeles, Netflix has commissioned pop-up ice cream parlors throughout the city in conjunction with Baskin & Robbins reassembling the show's Scoops Ahoy ice cream shop. Fans can visit the fictional Starcourt Mall in LA's Old Tower Records building. In Santa Monica, a Hawkins Fun Fair was held on the pier. The Chicago Cubs hosted an officially sanctioned Stranger Things themed night at Wrigley Field, and tickets are being sold for an immersive 80s Hawkins experience in London this fall, where Netflix has teamed up with Secret Cinema, which is an amazing... Secret Cinema is... I've only heard about it. It's amazing. You people in the UK are so lucky. More than 20 years ago, 2 management experts predicted the rise of the experience economy. They wrote in HBR that the progression of economic value had moved from goods to services and would continue on to experiences. They were right, especially in the realm of entertainment. From Stranger Things to Harry Potter to Star Wars, fans do not just want to watch or read about their favorite characters. And this is what I've been saying. They want to be them. They don the robes of Gryffindor, flick their wands, and drink the butterbeer. Yale psychologist Paul Bloom has found that American adults spend over 4 hours a day in imaginary worlds on average. The owners of fantasy properties understand this, and they're rushing to capitalize on this growing value stream in new ways. My research suggests that companies are increasingly using their merchandising rights, exclusive rights based on copyright and trademark, to control and profit from commercial goods based on a fantasy property, to control how fans experience their favorite stories. The move to claim exclusive rights and experience has implications for businesses, consumers, and our current laws in the U.S. for protecting intellectual property. As companies get more aggressive in their licensing fan activity, from fantasy-themed summer camps to pop-up bars, we should pause to think about the consequences of granting such exclusive rights to authorize experiences. Overreaching by companies can threaten creativity, competition, fan goodwill, and more fundamentally, the freedom to play and geek out about the stories we love. Until recently, companies have largely tolerated individuals who seek to bring their fictional worlds to life on the theory that going after one's fans is not good for business. When Quidditch leagues started popping up at universities, Warner Brothers considered commodifying them as part of its Harry Potter franchise, but ultimately declined to do so. There are more than 300 real-world Quidditch teams at universities worldwide. But as the experience economy has grown, with more consumers, especially millennials, preferring doing over having, many owners of cultural property have reconsidered their laissez-faire attitude, and we are now seeing more efforts to commodify some long-tolerated fan activity. Companies are increasingly issuing cease and desist demands to third parties using their creative capital, and they're offering their own official alternatives. There are many examples. J.R.R. Tolkien's estate shut down an unlicensed Lord of the Rings summer camp. DC Comics enjoined a custom car maker for making and selling real-life replicas of the Batmobile. Disney filed a trademark suit against a game maker for creating a mobile version of the fictional card game from the Star Wars universe, Sabacc. Warner Brothers shut down a venue that emulated the Great Hall at Hogwarts. A year ago, Netflix sent a cease and desist letter to the owners of an unauthorized Stranger Things pop-up bar in Chicago. They're now rolling out their own officially licensed pop-ups nationwide. The Cartoon Network prevented fans from opening an unauthorized Rick and Morty-themed pop-up bar in Washington, D.C. At a basic level, this makes business sense. In today's economy, the value of merchandise and merchandising experiences far surpasses the value of underlying intellectual properties themselves. Merchandising is a $262 billion a year industry. Exclusive merchandise licenses drive cultural production, underwriting the costs of making films and directing which creative projects get pursued in the first place. For example, Star Wars films brought in $8.2 billion. Star Wars merchandise has brought in $37 billion. And the merchandise market has only become more valuable as new technologies have enabled new modes of experience, emphasizing interactivity, role-playing performance, and embodiment. Where the market goes, the law has followed. But here's the thing. Should you go after, when fans are producing their own experiential events based on this IP, should you go after them? The fans necessarily didn't ask for their intense fandom to happen to them. It just happened. For whatever reason, people are predisposed to liking certain things. Science fiction, fantasy, and horror, imagination connoisseurs, we know what those things are. We know what we love, and it doesn't go away. But the question is, if I was going to throw a pop-up, if I was going to make a pop-up bar, or what if I wanted to make, I don't know, say a Star Trek feature film? Now, what if I made a really good Star Trek feature film? And even if it made money, I understand that you're already making Star Trek, but the feature film that I was looking to make, well, you weren't going to make that. You never were going to make that. You weren't going to spend any money on it. So if it got made and it appealed to lots of fans, and say you made a fan film like that, 4 million people watched it. Now, everyone knows it's from your franchise. They know you didn't manufacture it, but it's still bolstering. The reason it has 4 million views is because people like your franchise and they want more of it, and we were trying to give them something, or somebody was trying to give them something, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that they couldn't get elsewhere. And that's what being a fan is all about. That's what the modern age is like. So when William Shatner himself has made a documentary project and is selling it, and the documentary project is all about your IP, the CBS Star Trek IP, where, for the most part, it's very uplifting, all the interviews are very enlightening, and anybody who's interested in Star Trek would have a vested interest to sit down and watch this documentary series. Now, the first question I would have is, why didn't you buy that documentary series in the first place? I don't know. Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you didn't like what things were said in it. I don't know. But ultimately, it's still supporting your franchise. So when William Shatner, your own godfather, has an independent project that he went out and made, what's the harm? What's the harm in promoting it? It's good for your brand. Ultimately, you can chalk it up to marketing. Instead, you had the godfather of Star Trek put this out on the internet today. Is this better for your brand? Now, I understand there's complicated economic factors, and also at the bottom of this is companies are protecting their own IP. They're protecting their own copyrights, their own trademarks, and I wholeheartedly get behind that. I think they absolutely should. But on the other hand, I think you can do both. Now, let me finish reading this article. Where the market goes, the law has followed. Cultural practices, once free as the air we breathe, are increasingly becoming commodified and metered fare, regulated by licenses and royalties, requiring payment and permission. This has largely resulted from the Copyright Act of 1976, which gave companies control over not just substantially similar reproductions in the same medium, but also over derivatives in a wide range of media, even those far-flung from the original work. Today, that's how we got 50 Shades of Grey. Today, copyright owners of fantasy properties claim the right to control and benefit financially from any potentially derivative market inspired by their copyrighted universe. Everything from fan fiction to a pop-up bar to Quidditch leagues is tolerated at the copyright owner's sufferance or ordered to cease and desist in an absence of a license. And owners of trademarks argue that unlicensed merchants are free riding and profiting from brands built by others. I agree with that, though, but I have never seen a fan, well, except one, who made a lot of money off someone else's IP. I haven't seen much of that. Ironically, I was involved with one that was the most egregious, probably. But, yes, I mean, again, the question arises, what does it mean to be a fan? Why not promote William Shatner's project on StarTrek.com? I mean, he's William fucking Shatner. He's James Tiberius Kirk. Why would you not? He's the first captain of Star Trek. He will be always remembered that way. And why would you not want to? It's a very odd thing. I think it's odd because we have marketing. You market your brand to get the name out there. You spend tens of millions of dollars in marketing, and yet, for various IPs, you have an army of people that are willing to do thousands of hours of tedious work to promote your IP that you benefit from. William Shatner's got these documentaries out that Scream Factory or Shout Factory is selling about the experience of your own product. So people that buy it, do you think that I care where I get if CBS releases it or Shout Factory releases it? No, I just want to hear Shatner's views and all the people that he's interviewing in these documentaries. I want to own them and possess them and have them in my collection so I can watch them at my leisure. Now, you could choose to put them out or not, but I'm not going to be stopped from buying them simply because Paramount didn't put them out. They never had the opportunity to. So I think it's an odd thing to not allow. It can only, anytime you have William Shatner doing an interview on StarTrek.com, pimp the interview, pimp the Shatner appearance. That's going to drive traffic to the website. And isn't that what you want? Let me see. Even if the law permits it, companies should consider how efforts to shut down unlicensed fan activity may backfire. Asking fans to cease and desist can quickly turn fans' love to hate. It can also stifle creativity. Fans are arguably more innovative than companies when it comes to developing new ways of enjoying their favorite worlds. It's unfair for companies to stymie fan innovation only to piggyback and try and monetize it later. 20th Century Fox got into trouble just for this when it stopped the sale of handmade knit hats on Etsy inspired by the short-lived Joss Whedon TV series Firefly and decided it would exclusively license the hats itself. Fans were outraged because Fox bore no love for the show, canceling it before even finishing one season. The fans are the ones who kept the show alive, even though making, selling, and wearing the hats. Star Trek fans have similarly rebelled against prohibition on fan activity. Paramount published guidelines for fan filmmakers demanding, for example, that fan films no longer be no longer than 15 minutes. And fans viewed these limitations as a declaration of war. The law of intellectual property, which was intended to stimulate the creation of artistic works for humanity to enjoy, is being stretched by companies to commodify more and more forms of enjoyment. What is the effect of this expansion of rights on fundamentally human activity, such as the ability to play and reference the cultural works that shape our lives and societies? Perhaps the most influential theorist of aesthetic experience is John Dewey, and he argued that progress ought to be measured not by the creation of artistic works, but by the extent of human engagement and participation with those cultural works. That's why he advocated engaging in the art and culture around us to stimulate all the senses, because the ability to freely engage in an imaginative and joyful aesthetic activity is central to our humanity. The advancement of culture requires not only the production of more work, but also the participation in creative worlds that become real artifacts of modern culture. Owners of beloved cultural properties ought to consider a measured approach to asserting intellectual property rights on fan experiences. Really, companies ought to be pinching themselves that their fans want to bring their fictional worlds to life. Fan engagement extends both the lifespan and the value of the work itself. Fans make the work relevant to themselves and to others. Their love and devotion are what creators live for. And I agree with that. And that's why I think William Shatner should absolutely been allowed to be interviewed by StarTrek.com about his documentaries that are now out today on Shout Factory discs. And if you go to their website, shoutfactory.com, you can get that extra 5th disc Isn't that exciting? So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I'll bring it up. What do you think? Should StarTrek.com do an interview and promote William Shatner's new documentaries about the Star Trek franchise? Am I off base? What do you think? I could very well be. Anyway, let's see what you guys are saying in the old Chatterooski thing here. Bum, ba-dum, bum, wow. So, Calvin Bose says yesterday, he said, have you ever noticed when John Campea, you say Anders, but something a topic, the first thing he says is, and yes. I have. I like that, though. And yes, let's get into it, whatever that topic is. I think that's his way of ending one topic and starting another. I like it. Dan V is here and says, it's been a while, but I have to say I strongly disagree with anyone needing to listen to Ethan Van Sciver and Comicsgate to get a real opinion of Ethan Van Sciver. Actions do matter. Earlier this year, Ethan Van Sciver said Darwin Cook would be Comicsgate, which is a cowardly tactic. Well, I mean, he might have been making a point. I don't know. Dan V also goes on to say Ethan Van Sciver won't let that go and took a video out of context. I know his followers condone his behavior, which is bizarre to me, but Comicsgate likes pushing its own agenda. The Fandom Menace does the same thing while being hypocrites about characters like Ahsoka. Well, I can't speak to all of that because I don't know much about Ethan Van Sciver. But yeah, I mean, fans like this, comic book fans, movie fans, we've been Star Trek, Star Wars fans, we've been bitching about Star Trek and Star Wars for a very, very long time. Yeah. So, but look, I think if you wanted to interview people for our documentary, I do want to interview Ethan Van Sciver and hear what he has to say. Just like I want to interview Vox Day about the sad and rabid puppies. Like, why wouldn't I? You're making a documentary. You want to hear all different sides, even people you disagree with. Stubble McShave says, hi, Rob. I had a question about the short story competition. How essential is it that it reflects the channel? I've done an outline for a short story, but I can't say that it reflects the Robservations sense of positivity. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. The book, the anthology, The Imagination Connoisseurs, does not have to reflect the channel at all. Again, the channel's just throwing the party. It is all of you who are going to write the stories that are contributing, that are going to make the party what it is. I don't expect any stories to reflect. I wouldn't want them to reflect me at all. They're supposed to be reflections of you. I say the darker, the better. The more horrific, the better. I don't want to squander or squelch or take away from anyone's creativity. I want to see what we can get. The only thing is, the central premise, the central theme of it all is, the imagination connoisseurs. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you have to tell me the story about you being an imagination connoisseur. Tell me what happens. What happens when we live in these worlds where, like I'll tell you the premise of the short story that I'm writing. I'm writing a short story for the imagination connoisseurs, and I'll tell you what it is. It's about a guy who's so wrapped up in his fandom that he slips into his fan worlds. He slips in and out of them. And he lost his reality long ago. And he's looking to get back to it. He's looking to get back to the real world because his entire consciousness, everything he sees and experiences and feels, is from different fictional universes. And what's starting to happen is they're all bleeding into each other. And he realizes that when he can no longer keep his fictional universes straight, then he's lost. Then his sanity will be gone, and there's nothing left. So that's the story that I'm writing, and obviously I'm using myself as a starting point. But what happens with all the accumulated information you have in your brain about these fictional universes that have colonized or invaded your brain? Now, what happens when you can no longer keep track of them? What happens to your sanity? What happens when you can't figure out what's right and what's not right, and what's real and what's not real? So that's my story. I don't know what I'm calling it yet, but there you go. what happens when you become drunk or high on your own imagination. Doesn't lead to good things. Lord Toth is here, says, half the fun of the show is the great conversations in the chat. Thank you, my friends, for making every day so much fun. Thanks, Rob. Full speed ahead. Lord Toth says 1 of 2. Where's the rest of your... I guess he hasn't written it yet. Alexander Wilson says, so if it wasn't for Lucille Ball, there wouldn't be Star Trek. Is that true? Pretty much. Lucille Ball was a huge advocate of Star Trek and wanted to see it happen. Yes, so she was a very staunch supporter of it in the beginning. Oops. See what happens when you zip by here. Justin Toner says, or Toner, it's Toner, right? You told me once. It's Justin Toner says, hi, Rob. Criterion Collection is having a 24-hour flash sale on Criterion.com. 50% off everything in stock. I grabbed the horror classic The Blob and some samurai wuxia movies with 3 Outlaw Samurai and Dragon Inn. Haven't seen the latter 2, so can't wait. Cheers. I didn't know that. I didn't know Criterion was having a 50% off sale. I have to look. I mean, I'm pretty Criterioned up. I've stocked up. I mean, I think my physical media collection, there's only a few things I want. Do they have that Bergman box set? I kind of want that shit. Yeah. Love to get that 50% off. Jeff Yerke is here. Hello, Jeff. First of all, let me just say, I know what you're going to say. You say your wife says hello. So let me preempt your comment by saying, please say hello to the wife of the Yerk man. Say hello to her for me. Give her my best. Hi, Rob. Over the past 30 years, I have graphic design primarily for law firms. That's what I do. And one thing I have learned about IP is that if a company does not aggressively protect their IP, they risk losing it. That's another very valid point, that they risk losing it. I absolutely, 100%. I totally agree with you. That's why I have to protect it. But again, I mean, that's an actual academic reason, which I don't disagree with. Stubble says, denial, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance is how I remembered it, because I remembered it from all that jazz. In what stage of grief are you in for the current state of Star Trek? The old Trek is dead in modern Trek storytelling, and it's natural to grieve for what is lost. Hopefully it's not lost forever. I'm probably in anger. I don't really get depressed. I'm angry about it. And I've kind of accepted it, but I mean, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I just have to watch it, and I listen to other people who enjoy it, and I look at it, and I'm like, can't enjoy this. Can't enjoy it. So, Bunyan Snipe, our own moderator, is here. What would Star Trek look like now if it had not moved from NBC to CBS? Well, it died. Remember, Star Trek died. It died. It was resurrected in strip syndication. So if it hadn't gone into syndication, it would have died. But I think Star Trek would have continued on without CBS. I think there would have been different forms of it. It always would have come back. So I think it probably still would be around in some way, shape, or form. Raging Raptor sends in a super chat and says, StarTrek.com has articles on other non-CBS docs. Well, there you go. I guess they say because it's William Shatner, it's regarding Star Trek, because we don't own it, we're not going to talk about it, which to me is absurd. But by doing that, then they're saying that they release their own videos, but maybe they're afraid of the what they're saying to other licensees that would come after them and want to put that out and make money. I mean, it's always about the money. But, you know, who knows? Let's see. This one comes from Cinema Gulp. Hey there, Rob and the PGS. I'm writing to you today as we are all dead in the middle of October, a month that I personally consider all horror all the time. That's what we're doing on Whining About Movies. Whining About Movies tonight. At 7:30, we are talking about, that's right, the original Friday the 13th. Watched it, and it was different than I remember. That was my birthday movie when I turned 13 in 1980. My dad took me and a few of my friends to the Coliseum Theater in downtown Seattle to see Friday the 13th. I'm writing to you today as we are dead in the middle of October, a month that I personally consider all horror all the time. I recently watched Kevin Tenney's Night of the Demons, which is an October regular for me. It's so good. I love it. Its use of low camera angles, amazing Steve Johnson makeup work, and of course Linnea Quigley. Can you believe it was shot by the same guy who did Pee-wee's Playhouse? Kind of makes sense, actually. So Night of the Demons really got me thinking about horror sequels and which ones are good and which ones are shite. Obviously, the horror sequels track record isn't great, but I've been doing some deep diving into some of the most well-known atrocities when it comes to sequels, and there are cases to be made for many of them. While the Night of the Demons sequels were what made me think to write this, they are complete crap and excluded from moving forward. No, the sequel I want to make a case for today is the highly misunderstood and possibly underrated A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Dead. Okay, so it's not a great film. However, props should be given for its daring desire to be different. In a year removed from the original film and without Wes Craven, Part 2 managed to reinvent its intentions, rules, and playbook to come up with a completely different type of story revolving around the titular villain Freddy Krueger. In a great marketing move, Freddy's name was added to the film's title to make sure people knew this franchise wasn't going in a Halloween 3 Season of the Witch direction. There are a few genuine scares and some truly fucked up scenes in this film, one particularly involving a naked high school student, a gym teacher, and a locker room shower whipping. Where it fails to live up to its predecessor is exactly what it's trying to change things up. Where it's trying to change things up. There, its logic gets even more out of whack, however. The idea of Freddy trying to break free from the dream world doesn't seem to make any fucking sense. He owns every inch of the dream world. He controls the world and all of its elements. In Part 1, we saw how vulnerable he is to the outside world, though this film seems to throw all that out the window. The point of that was to break him of his energy. Here, he uses Jesse, the only male lead in any of these films, to do his dirty work. But was it Nancy's diary that kept him lurking in the shadows of the house? And if so, did no one else live there in the 5 years that have supposed to have passed since the first one? It's said that the house took 5 years to sell, but why didn't the new owners not know what went down there? Full disclosure, anyone? I guess it doesn't really matter since this film is pretty much saying, fuck it, at every turn. The story is not the problem. The story actually really works. It was more the execution that falls short. I feel there are elements in this film that are frightening and really get under your skin. For one thing, as cheesy as some say he was, Matt Patton, who plays Jesse, really used his performance to present an everyday high school boy trying to make it through the dog days of a new school. He has a large range of squeal and super high pitches at that, and it really sells how crazy scared he is in some of his scenes. Having said all this, the film has balls for being so off-the-wall different from the original and taking the entire theme and tone in totally different directions, whereas every other sequel just seemed to copy and paste. The film works on its own, I feel. However, the expectations to follow the first one carved this one's gravestone. All in all, this one gets probably the worst rap out of all the sequels, but watch it again and tell me that it's not the most frightening. Freddy is still actually menacing in this one and hadn't fallen over to a stand-up comedy routine yet. The backyard party massacre scene is crazy fun and terrifying, having never seen Freddy lash out at so murderous before or after this film. I give the film credit for many reasons. It's not my favorite Nightmare film. It's not even the best sequel, but it gets a bad rap. Every darn disturbing and definitely, it's pretty darn disturbing and definitely scarier than any of the sequels to follow. As always, Viceroy, thank you for reading my letter. You are the man, sir. Speaking of my horror channel, or speaking of horror, I don't know why I can't read today. My channel just released our 5th annual Halloween Mixer, where we feature reviews of both Night of the Demons and 1980's The Changeling. That's a terrific movie. Would love it if you have time to check it out. Well, here, not only will I check it out, I'll put it into the live chat, and you can check it out too. Let me put that in. So that goes here. All right. So you got that. And good day to you and live long and prosper. Cinema Gulp. Well, Cinema Gulp, that was a divine letter. Thank you for sending it in. Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you for that. This comes from John Ortiz. Hey, Rob, when I saw this story about Haribo gummy bears and the effect they had on the gentleman in line for an overseas flight, I thought I'd send it your way. Oh, I know this. Yeah, this is something. Oh, this is okay. This is a video? Oh my God, does the real guy tell this story? All of you should go read this. Hey, let me finish it. I know of your love of Haribo, and I see that Dieter from Deutschland has included it in many of his care packages. This reads more like a novel and is both hilarious and horrible. It's quite long, so do it with it what you want. Is that okay? I got a big kick out of it. Hope you do. Take care. Stay safe. John Ortiz. All right, for those of you who don't know, I will tell you. First of all, let me put this in live chat. It's in the live chat. I have a great love of Haribo gummy bears, and these that Dieter sent me, they do. The German ones taste a little different than the ones in the United States. And I thank him for sending them to me. I love these. I've always loved them. I don't love any other gummy bears, but man, Haribo, yeah, love it. Bring it on, John. Although it's really difficult to do a show when you have to talk while you're eating a gummy bear. But sugar-free Haribo gummy bears. Apparently there's something in them that cause you to have, well, explosive diarrhea. And if you read this story, it is very, 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 very funny. Very funny. Let's see. Omar94 says, hello, Omar. Sorry, I guess I'm just swallow this gummy bear. So anyway, Omar94 writes in, hi, Rob. I just saw The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And while it's more style over substance, I still found the film to be fun, despite the plot being a bit convoluted. It got me thinking about how studios feel about movie budgets. They are spending far too much, even when they try not to. Before Guy Ritchie was hired to make The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Steven Soderbergh tried making it, but he left due to a conflict with Warner Brothers over the budget. Warner Brothers wanted the budget to be under $60 million, but Soderbergh argued how could a period piece with international settings, sets, and props, it would need more than $60 million. Then Guy Ritchie was hired, and he made the film for over $60 million, as the film's final budget is somewhere between $75 to $84 million. Who knows what happened there? Before Roland Emmerich made Godzilla, Jan de Bont was going to make it. He left because of a conflict over the budget. He felt the movie needed a budget of somewhere between $100 million to $120 million, but TriStar Pictures refused to approve it. When Emmerich was hired and made the film, the budget was somewhere between $130 to $150 million. Again, who knows what happened there? I'm not sure what the studios are thinking, since there are examples of them trying to make movies for less money, but they eventually cave and spend more. Thanks and live long and prosper. Well, you're not taking into consideration who actually came on board to make those movies. So, I mean, I don't know why Steven Soderbergh left, but it was over money or how, whatever. I mean, you decide a movie's budget by a number of things. Your stars, how much you're going to have to pay them, how much you're going to have to pay your above-the-line talent, how much you're going to have to pay your below-the-line talent, how much did the script cost, how much did everything cost to develop, and then what kind of a movie are you making? Are you globe-trotting, which makes the price go up? And so you have to really decide. And it's really based on all those things together, how much they're actually going to spend. But I agree with you. I think movies have become way too expensive because of post-production and CG and all that. They've added so much to the budget of films, and I don't know if we're getting better films because of it. And I would tend to think that maybe that we're not. You know, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really what the market will bear. I mean, they're always trying to figure out, well, what are people going to pay to go see? And those. Let's see. We're just back to the same place. That's good. I haven't missed anything. Guess what? You know what? I think I'm going to end this show here. It's a short one, 75 minutes today. I've got some work that I have to do, but I said my piece. I still have a lot of letters to read from you all, but yeah. So I'm going to end Robservations episode number 359. I can't believe it. 359. But we're going to be on later tonight for Whining About Movies, talking about the very first Friday the 13th, which Elizabeth had never seen before. And that's pretty exciting. The ongoing Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival is still going on until December 1st. Make a movie. Send it in. I'll play it. You will see Trinidad the Island Man's movie tomorrow, and bring some handkerchiefs. I apologize for that. That's going to be up tomorrow. So that is exciting. And of course, as you all know, the book competition, the short story competition, you know what? It's not really a competition, because we just want to get the best stories and we're going to publish them in an anthology. I mean, we're going to give out some awards, of course, but so that's going on. We need your story. It's got to be between 5,000 and 10,000 words. We need it by the 14th of February. And I told you what my idea was, so don't steal it. And we have the poster cover competition. Actually, it's a cover competition. There's no poster. A cover competition to design the poster of the... Can I speak today? The cover of the book will be available. Well, we're going to start on the 2nd of December and go through December 31st. And for the winning story, the story we pick, I am going to direct a film version of it between March and when it debuts here. It will debut here on May 15th, which is my birthday. So that's all coming up. So that's very exciting. I want to thank everybody who is here. Look, Mr. MC Blackcap is here, one of our new moderators. Good to have you. I also want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank the Richard, who always runs these great watch parties over the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. So go find him and tell him that I sent you. I want to thank Bunyan Snipe is here also. And so that's all very exciting. I think I got everybody. Robert Priso is here. Say hello to Robert Priso. Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate that. You've got the good first name. And there you go. So that brings us to the end of Robservations episode 539. I just want to say that, as you all know, do I have to say it again? Yes, I do, because I have to say it every time. Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone on this shorter show than usual, have a better day.